G'day. It's Dave here again. How are you? Now, look, this is about assignment two, finding and using data for benchmarking and the risk management process. I'm going to throw in another um, uh, possibility for you to do as well. So you can do either one or other, because there are some people who are going to find it difficult to find an industry for which there is available information and compare it to another industry which is the same. It's very difficult. It was probably foolish of me to make this one up. If you want to, you're welcome to continue to do this. It's not a problem. Um, and I'll just explain what I meant by it, and that is to hunt down some data. So look at it this way: say you're working in the supermarket, industry. You're retailing food, and that's the industry you're looking at. Have a look. You can look at any other industry if you can get the figures on retailing food, which you might be able to do. You've got to hunt that up, find it. Figures on injury, illness, and death for that, and then find any other industry and compare the two. And the way you compare them is to feed the data into a spreadsheet, observe what the data describes, critically analyze the data, which just means basically look at it and say, well, I'm not sure about the data on this, maybe they are missing out some variables involved in it, and that would make a big difference to long-term survival rates. Say, some industries kill people straight off, others take a long time. I don't want to sort of labour the point, but Whitnum, which is where the asbestos was a mining industry, and if you just looked at it in terms of injuries at the time or illness at the time, you probably wouldn't have found much. But 30, 40 years later, you're finding people dropping dead at an alarming rate, and that wouldn't be in the stats that you got at that time. The same things will be happening now for different products, different things. So one of the things is sedentary lifestyles, which are brought with sedentary work, life practice, which has a real big problem with heart conditions, and so or circulatory problems, uh, which can lead to long-term, uh, you know, sh- shortening of your lifespan. Um, so that's the essence of that, right? Then develop a hypothesis for at least two variables. I'm not even sure I know what that means, but essentially, just rave on about it is the essence of it. Look at it and sort of say, well, um, they used there's two variables that I could pick out. For instance, back strain might be a variable, and one thing. Another one might be a specific illness that attaches to that, or it could be, physical injury if you were looking at the kind of industry where machinery is used a lot. You often get people being hit by instruments, and take building as a trade, for instance. There's all sorts of problems that go on with that. So look, you can do that. It's just open slather, really. You can do what you want with it. What I'm trying to measure is your ability to play a little bit more deeply with data. So it's a stage before assignment three. It's a stage after assignment one. So whereas in assignment one, um, we looked at a very specific report, and we looked at it and said, what's going on with it. And by the way, if you haven't handed it in yet, it's still okay. Don't worry. Take your time. And those who have handed it in, I should be finishing up hopefully by the end of this week, beginning of next, in terms of getting stuff back to you. But I try and make a recording for each person, a voice recording, to sort of tell them about what I think, and give you plenty of feedback. But don't worry, if it's late in getting back to you. I know hopefully this won't stir you up too much. But if it's, certainly if there are problems with getting it back because you had it in late, or whatever, for whatever reason whatsoever, obviously automatic extension on assignment 2 and assignment 3 applies. So I'm not disadvantaging anyone who feels like, oh my God, if I don't get a report back from Dave, you don't want to do assignment 2 until you've find out from me whether you've done it right in assignment 1. You will have done it right in assignment 1. I can almost definitely say so, because it's very hard not to. But you may want to wait and to start assignment 2, or to launch into it without knowledge of how you went in assignment 1. You're welcome if you want. If it's a time scheduling problem for you, send me an email and I'll pull your assignment out quickly and do it so that you're not feeling too at the you know I don't even know what I'm talking about now. Anyway, sorry, it's late at night. So now let me see, what am I doing here? Whoops, I got to get rid of this. So I'll get rid of this. Right, now I'm going to put, that didn't get rid of it. There we are. Right, now the second option for assignment 2 is that I'm giving you what is a very depthy kind of report. This is the report. It's got a lot in it. Let's have a look. I'll scroll up to the top. It'll be attached there somewhere. I'll give it to you. It'll be out there. It's Safe Work Australia's report, The Cost of Work-Related Injury and Illness for Australian Employers, Workers and the Community. And they take the reference year, what they call the reference year of 2008-9, so the tax year, I guess, that means. And they do that because there's problems with data. That's a pretty big job they're trying to do. To measure the cost of work-related injury is a massive job. So they start off, I'm just going to take you through it very quickly. They give you an executive summary, which is kind of okay, but it's full of all sorts of different, quite complex ideas and so forth. And you're going to come across these sort of things in your work life. They're dense. They're written by people who kind of are familiar with all the terms and terminologies and ideas themselves, and they flick them out here and flick them out there, and nobody knows what the bloody hell's going on. But and this is one of those kind of reports. It's one that you have to sort of sit over for a while to get a feel for it and get an idea. But don't get frustrated while you're reading it thinking, I don't understand where the hell it's going. You'll remember that I did a law degree, and almost invariably every case you ever read, you start off thinking, what are they talking about? The way to deal with it is just to keep going, and as you keep reading it through, you start to find that things are getting down to more specific stuff. I've highlighted some areas of text, so don't take that as being the only areas that need to be highlighted. They're just things that happen to interest me, some things that I look at and thought, wow, well, I'd like to come back to that. It's got what's interesting about this one is that it's got a lot of data in it. I'll show you there's a list of all the tables it's got. It's got in total, I think, one graph. Let me just have a look through, see if we can find the graph. There we are. This one. Look, see, a graph. And it tells me almost nothing. I have no idea what it means. It's very difficult. I hate these kind of bar graphs. I really think that it's a kind of waste of time doing them in that particular way. I mean, you can understand it, but it's the scales all out. It's just difficult. Much better put them side by side and you can look at them, because you're looking at the three variables here. How much is the cost, the estimated cost, for employers, for society, and for the worker? And this report really um, amazed me in a sense because look at the percentage you see straight away. I mean, this graph, no matter whether it's not brilliant or not, the total cost borne by workers for injury and illness at work is massive in comparison to the societal cost, and absolutely insanely costly in comparison to what the employer bears over the term. Now, there's some debate about that figure would change if you took into account the fact that employers have to pay workers' compensation premiums and so forth, which they do, and whether that was included. And they've included in as far as I can see in this report, they've included that in the cost to society because most workers' compensation employment costs are passed on by the employer through to whatever their product is. So that they mark it as a cost to the business, and that cost to the business is tax deductible for a start, and secondly, that cost gets put onto the price that they're actually charging for goods and services on the other side. So, it's not like they're absorbing that cost. So the person who is actually absorbing it is society. So that's pretty cluey, I reckon. I like that. Anyway, as you can see, there's a lot of sort of fairly dense data in it. And what I've done is I've taken this data, or the majority of it, most of it. You can do it yourself pretty easily because it's in Microsoft Word format. You can copy it by just clicking on it, holding down the Shift key, and you'll get see how that's taken all of the data that's there. You can then copy that and then just release it into a spreadsheet, and it'll generally stick in the right things for you, so you've got an idea of what it is. Anyway, I've taken quite a few of them, and I'll do a couple more. All the ones that are in red on it, I've put into a spreadsheet. So here's the spreadsheet. Now, because don't forget mine's a Mac, it's a little bit different from Excel. Excel has its sheets, I think, down the bottom. Macs have them on the side. It's just one of those things. And anyway, they should turn out alright. If not, give us a yell, and I will make set them up as a single spreadsheet and post them to you, or email them to you, or whatever. So and these are the kind of things that you got. So they're in different sizes, but they're all basically set up in the spreadsheet. Now, what you can do with that is what I want you to do with it is to have a look and play with them. Like look at them and see what the visual tells you about what's going on here. Because honestly, just to look at it like that tells me nothing. But I'm not good at interpreting or understanding numbers. Pictures I can see straight away, and I think that a lot of humans are visual. So look, you might not be, and you may find that you can work it out without the visuals. But I want you to try them because it's important to learn to be able to do graphs. And look, when when you're actually working in the industry itself, you're trying to convince people to do particular things. You're trying to change the way people think about things. And the best way of doing that is to explain to people graphically, if you can, what's actually going on. It wasn't until the BMI, the body mass index, got released and taken out that people started to suddenly talk about things like obesity, being overweight or being underweight or whatever. And although it's a very crude way of testing a person's morbidity, whether they're going to get sick or not, or what their weight is. The BMI was a single figure you could look at, and you could put it on a graph and say, 40% of all children under the age of 12 in the US southern states are obese. morbidly obese, and that you can just look at it then and go, wow, no, that's just not right. We've got to do something about it. Does it? Then you can look at it in relationship to hospital visits, and you can do all sorts of different things like that. But you've got to first of all be aware of the fact by creating a variable or a figure that comes out of a number of variables. With BMI, it comes out with height over weight over age, I think it is, isn't it? I don't know whether there's age involved in it or not. Anyway, certainly height and weight, and what you're supposed to be. But it's very crude judgment, because it doesn't take into account the fact that muscle weighs a lot more than fat. So you get people who are extremely muscly and quite healthy. You end up with a high BMI. Coffee and cigarettes, my great love. Um, Although I'm down to only smoking about 10 a day now, 5 a day. I'm just trying to get rid of the last 5 years of my life, because that'll probably be in an old people's home. So it's kind of suicide, slow suicide. I've got all these things here anyway, so you can have a look through them, and I'll put them up there for you, and you should be able to fed them into the data into the sheets, and you should be able to look at them and line them up and create a few understandings from them. So, question is, what the hell do I want, right? Well, let me just get rid of that. So you get that document, you get this set of spreadsheets, and then this is what I'm looking at. So what this report does is it looks at injury, illness and death, measured over weeks, months and years, and tries to calculate a cost that will a cost framework. So reducing it to a cost framework, and most of it comes down to like percentage of gross national product, right, or gross domestic product, GDP, to give you an idea, and that then gives a benchmark, if you like, to other societies. So that's like one very big benchmark. You can look at it from the point of view of what's it like in Finland? What's it like in the United States? What's it like in Japan? And you can do very, very big kind of comparative understandings. But hidden in this data, or in this data, are some interesting little bits. So what I want you to do is to find two of them. Any two will do. So first of all, you've got to read the entire document without falling asleep. Now that is probably the biggest challenge, okay? I suspect that what you need is at least 2 cups of coffee before you even start on it, okay? Don't worry that it's wordy. Like I said, when it gets down to more detail, it makes a bit more sense, and when you start to play with the figures, it makes a lot more sense. I want you to pick 2 observations that interest you. So you look at the data itself, and like I did just a minute ago, and saying, "Whoa, bloody workers really get hammered on this one." I really would have thought it wouldn't have been like such a small amount of money that it costs both the employer and society, in comparison to what's loaded onto the worker themselves, who are probably the least capable of affording it. You wouldn't. I would never have thought that was the case, and it really shocked me. And so I want to dig a bit deeper. What's really going on here? Why is it? Is the data that they're giving us good? Is it like, particularly if you get a gut reaction like that, you've really got to look at the data and say, what are they including as costs for the worker? So you might pick that. You're welcome to pick that particular one if you want. I'd be interested to see if everybody did that. It'd be great, as far as I'm concerned. So there's no, and you can get together and do it. You can talk to each other, whatever you need to do. The question is the learning. It's not about the form. I've never been particularly worried about people working together on things. I think it's a great idea. It's what you do in real life anyway, isn't it? You don't just sort of sit there if you've got a problem and work it through in your own head. You go and talk to people, and that's all part of it. Okay, so I want you to pick 2 observations that interest you, that arise out of this document. Now, if you can find another document or another thing that's as interesting to you and say applies to your work or whatever, you can do that as well. That's not a problem, but you must send me the document, and you must give me the document at the same time as you put your assignment in. Okay, and the data, any data sheets any graphs that come out of it. So I'm giving you this one as a sort of standard, which you're welcome to do. But if you've got some more interesting stuff to do, then you do that. Okay. Um, Use the spreadsheet data to illustrate and illuminate what you think it shows. So for like look at it and see, is there a breakdown somewhere? What's going on? There's some stuff there between states. New South Wales got a very high proportion of the thing. Is it more dangerous to live in New South Wales than it is to live in somewhere else? Has it got a higher proportion of farmers? Is the farming industry dangerous? All of these things you can go and have a quick look. You can just sort of dive out to. Now, I'm not asking for totally accurate figures. I don't care how accurate they are. I don't care where you get them from, how accurate they are, long as they're not just completely whoops. Let's get rid of this for a second. Rightio. I'm not particularly worried about where you get it from, what you do with it, as long as it's got some sort of veracity. It's made up figures are probably a no-go, because they probably won't help you anyway. But if you've got some figures or you find some stuff, go to the ABS site, see what you can steal off that. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. If you want to find something a bit more interesting, or you find this document too awful, then that's fine by me too. Note what variables may be missing, if any, and you should do this with everything. So this is a kind of standardized thing that you do with stats, right? So let me go back to the very beginning with it again. So with stats, you look at the document that you get, and you'll get a lot of documentation that comes through, you'll find, that gives you statistics on occupational health and safety. Observe things that they talk about. They're usually not just raw data, they're usually something which is an interpretive document of the data that's been used. Put them into a spreadsheet yourself. Don't just take what they've got. Put them into a spreadsheet yourself if they give you the raw data, and which they should do, and then and have a look and see what you think it shows. Note what variables may be missing which may have an effect on it. For instance, are they taken into account the long-term cost of illness? Had they taken into account a person coming off work for 6 months and coming back but at a lower grade, not able to do the same sort of work again? And there's so many variables that could be missing, but just throw a few in, just so I can see that you get the idea of what you're doing, what variables might be missing. Anything will do. It's cool. No. I'm not a variables Nazi here. You can choose any variables you like, not like the soup Nazi. Is there anything that indicates where you should prioritize hazards and risks in a workplace? Is there anything that, and this is a very important bit, this is where you tie the statistics side to the health and safety side, because you're not just doing stats for stats sake. What you're doing is you're doing stats to help you see the world in a slightly different way, or even sometimes a radically different way, to give you priority, help you prioritize the what you might look at as hazards. So you might look at them, for instance, and say, the obvious hazards, say, for instance, in factories, is, exposure to chemicals, chemicals use of machinery, lifting, back hazards, slip and falls, all of the rest of the normal shit that goes on. But it may be that when you look at this, the data that comes out of this, that in fact illness is a much more important thing and you hadn't thought of it, or it hasn't really come up as much in your data, in your organisation. Maybe that's the point you look at and say, I've really got to put a bit extra effort into identifying hazards and calculating risks on this particular thing. So it's all part of the risk management process. You can't have a risk management process that hangs outside of a statistical model. It's got to have some statistical model to inform it as to what's going on, what's actually going on in the factory. It's not you going to work and walking around looking at things. That's part of it. There's no question that's part of it. But, and it certainly shouldn't be you sitting down waiting for someone to get hurt or injured or sick and then writing it down and saying, aha, what you've got to try and do is to get this stuff done in a way that's very, more informed by the data than it is by just kind of looking around. The more data you get, it's in a sense, if you like, look, the world is this sort of enormous mistake factory, stuff up factory. Um, Laws like that. In fact, all laws are sort of a database of stuff ups. One of the things that lawyers are very good at risk analysis. One of the reasons being because all of the cases we read and all of the people we work with are in a position which they shouldn't be in. They don't want to be in. They hate being in. And if only they'd come and seen us earlier, we probably could have warned them straight away. Do not do that. Very classic things like never ever be in a partnership, to always form a corporation, and there are many reasons for that. But you get people who form partnerships and then come horribly unstuck with liabilities. Um, in law, it's exactly the same with when you're looking at health and safety. You need to end up with an enormous database of stuff ups. What can go wrong will go wrong. Murphy's law will apply. You will end up with some problems. Always the case. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that. I don't think there's anything else that I've got there that's hiding. No, just a map of the world. That's basically it. And I shall see you. Send me emails if you're unsure about anything that I've said here. And I'll put all of this stuff up online right this minute, which is Thursday the 13th of September at 12:09 a.m. And so it should be up before the morning. And Apple will have released its iPhone 5. Yay! So I'm hoping to get one of those. I'll catch you later. Bye.